Mold exposure, especially from water-damaged buildings, can trigger a response called CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through what to know about CIRS and how it affects a lot of individuals that we are working with on a daily basis and where to start. You may be familiar with Dr. Shoemaker. He is one of the leaders in identifying mold illness, and his research has shown that individuals that have CIRS have elevated levels of cytokines where they really can't turn off the immune system. The immune system is in this hyper or overactivation type situation. And the reason why this affects so many people that already have pre-existing autoimmunity like Hashimoto's is that when there is autoimmunity present, this same thing is happening. There's a T cell dominance that's occurring within the immune system, and the immune system is already in an overreactive state where it's targeting tissues that it shouldn't be and trying to destroy them. A lot of individuals think that with autoimmunity comes immune suppression, but it's actually the opposite, where we're actually seeing overactivity of the immune system. And a lot of times we hear from these individuals things like, I never get sick, or my white blood cells have always been on the low end or the high end of the range. And that's because we're seeing different situations play out within the immune system's underactivity or hyperreactivity. So the reason why this can cause CIRS is that a lot of times when individuals start to try to detox mold, they actually get sicker. And that's because when you start to mobilize these mycotoxins from the places that they're stored, primarily within gut tissue, as well as within the nasal passages, we start to actually get an inflammatory response. And in individuals that already are dealing with this type of issue, there's already heightened levels of inflammation at play. And so when this inflammatory response occurs, it overburdens the body, particularly the liver and the kidneys, where these mycotoxins get excreted from, and it creates this inflammatory response that triggers more of what we call like cell danger response in the body. And this is when you start to notice a lot of more chronic symptoms happen, like the fatigue, joint pain, headaches, migraines, and overall feeling a level of malaise. Now, let's talk about what happens when you start to mobilize mold toxins, these mycotoxins. When you start to mobilize them, oftentimes people will start with support options that mobilize things through phase 1 and phase 2 of the liver. We technically have 3 layers of detoxification within the liver: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 3 is that end stage. It's really happening within our gut, and that's where we're going to see things come out in the toilet through your stool. Phase 1 and phase 2 are more so happening within the liver. Phase 1 is converting toxins over to a water-soluble form that can actually go through the kidneys. Phase 2 takes anything that cannot be converted into a water-soluble form and takes it through the liver to then push it out through phase 3. So when we upregulate phase 1 and phase 2, we could actually be making problems worse, because if we don't have good phase 3 detoxification, then it's like the drain is clogged and there's nowhere for all those toxins that we're mobilizing to go. And so that's why we're always looking at starting with phase 3, making sure that that area is open and that the body is properly draining and able to mobilize anything that we start pushing through. However, within that, we still oftentimes don't want to start with just upregulating phase 3 detoxification, because sometimes that can also cause more of this CIRS response to occur. And that's where mitochondria play a role. You might have heard of mitochondria before. They're the powerhouses of our cells. And mitochondria are responsible for helping our body do everything that requires energy production, including detoxification. In individuals that have low thyroid function, whether it's hypothyroidism or just low free T3 syndrome or Hashimoto's, there's actually mitochondrial sluggishness occurring. And that's because your thyroid is actually responsible for mitochondrial activity. So if we have low levels of thyroid hormones, our body isn't able to properly detoxify, and this can actually impair the processes of phase 1 through phase 3 detoxification. This is when individuals will start to notice lots of fatigue, brain fog, headaches or migraines, and other types of inflammatory symptoms occur. So it's a little bit of a two-pronged approach, where we want to, 1, make sure that we've supported mitochondrial function first, so that we've produced the energy or supported energy production to help the body have the resources to detoxify. And then the step 2 is making sure that our drainage is open, so that as we turn on the faucet and as we start to get phase 1 and phase 2 ramped up, that those toxins that we are mobilizing actually have somewhere to go. And so there's always a systematic approach we take with the steps that we take based off your unique health picture, understanding not just your lab values of how high mycotoxins do you have, but also what does your thyroid function look like? Do you have autoimmunity present? Where is your white blood cell function? Where's your overall immune tolerance? Is there a high amount of different viruses your body is dealing dealing with? How is your gut function? There's so many variables that go into play to make sure that your body is actually going to be capable to detoxify and that it's not going to trigger a chronic inflammatory response and or something like CIRS. So here are 4 critical steps that you want to take if you know that you've been exposed to mold and are also having a lot of these CIRS type symptoms. Number 1 is support the mitochondria first. We can do this by incorporating different dietary sources as well as food sources that provide us with mitochondrial energy. Think of things that are rich in antioxidants like your dark leafy greens and berries, as well as utilizing mitochondrial support nutrients. We can also look at utilizing different types of tools like red light exposure or maybe low impact exercise, because exercise is one of the best ways to improve mitochondrial function and the number of mitochondria. However, there is a threshold to typically how much people can tolerate that are dealing with CIRS, and sometimes it might be a lot less than you think that you're able to tolerate. We really want to look at conserving energy when we're in a CIRS response, and even things like scrolling your phone on Instagram could actually be expending energy because you're utilizing brain cells to be able to do so. So that's step 1. Now let's talk about step 2. Step 2 is opening up drainage pathways. Our body drains through several different ways. We drain through our skin, through our sweat, we drain through our liver, which comes out our poop, we drain through our kidneys, which comes out as urine, and we also drain through our lymphatic system. So if there's any cloggage happening in any of these areas, we might want to look at utilizing support that can help open up, get us sweating more effectively, getting us pooping and peeing more regularly, and also helping clear any lymph stagnation that could be happening. Step 3 is prioritizing binding before mobilizing. Binding is a strategy that we might look at doing through utilizing specific food sources that are high in fibers, as well as utilizing supplemental sources of binders. The type of binders that we use is really going to be dependent off the type of mycotoxins, as each mycotoxin responds differently to different types of binders. And that's why I always recommend mycotoxin testing, which is something we do within our one-on-one practice, versus just starting on mold detoxification, because you might have a type of mycotoxin that doesn't respond to the type of binder that you're utilizing. And we want to be very cautious in utilizing binders as they're very depleting in the body. It can actually impact mitochondrial function more if we use them too aggressively or for too extended of a time period. Then we can start mobilizing, and that's where we start helping the kidneys and the liver drain through and push these mycotoxins out, and also potentially utilizing things like sauna or other types of sweating techniques to help our body mobilize further. Finally, we want to make sure that we've controlled for inflammation. If you have high levels of inflammation happening, then you are probably going to notice more of a CIRS response happen when you start to detoxify. Controlling inflammation looks different for every individual. We can, yes, use testing to identify if there is inflammation or oxidative stress present, but it's not always the most accurate way to understand if there is inflammation at play. We really take a 4 systems approach when it comes to controlling the inflammatory response. That's something that we help you walk through in our program, Inflammation Harmony. And if you want to learn more about some of the key labs that are outside of just those traditional inflammatory testing techniques, check out my lab decoder guide, where I walk you through how to detect inflammation within other types of labs that you might already have on hand. The bottom line is that when you have a thyroid condition like low thyroid function, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, there's really 3 things that are going on. 1, it's your immune system, 2, mitochondrial function, and 3, your detox organs. So we want to be looking at where we might need support in each of these areas before we just start to go in with high level mold support. If you're dealing with CIRS, you don't need to often push harder. You sometimes need to pull the levers off and reevaluate where there might be some holes in your current plan, and potentially even gather more data to give you more insight into where your body needs additional support, or working with a practitioner who can really help piece together where there might be gaps in your current treatment. You can learn more about our one-on-one approach over at functionalfueling.com/coaching-page. Be sure to hit the bell to subscribe to my channel to be the first to know whenever I release a new video.